Oh, this one's really, really real. I feel bad and not good and unworthy. Ouch. Okay.
In today's video, I'm going to be following on from my recent real talk about witchcraft and depression, and I'm going to be touching on some subjects which do come into mental health. Some of those being things like imposter syndrome, comparison, overwhelm, as well as other mental health challenges and other human difficulties that many of us do struggle with. And most practitioners will have come across this in their practice already, or will at some point in their life come across some of these feelings and thoughts and situations and circumstances within their practice. So it's going to be a really casual, real talk today. Get yourself a nice hot drink, settle back, relax and enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are well and safe and that you're taking care of yourselves and adjusting as we move forward with all the changes in the collective and in our personal lives, which I'm sure you are all feeling and experiencing. It's just been a lot. The last few years has been a lot. And I think especially if you're a spiritual person or someone who connects to the earth and you follow a pagan tradition, many within our community have, I know, experienced some of these things over the last few years, and more so because of the situations that we've been in. But I personally do want to feel that my practice is a safe space for me. And so when your practice becomes kind of intertwined with some of the difficulties that you're experiencing, it can be kind of jarring, it can be upsetting, you can feel very detached, you can start to feel like you're not being authentic somehow, and there's just a lot that goes into it. I'm just gonna give a disclaimer at the start because I am not a mental health practitioner. I have received mental health support over the years from counsellors, CBT therapists and the like. I've received support for anxiety, generalised anxiety, as well as depression, postnatal depression, OCD and post-traumatic stress. I've experienced some of these things more than others, and some of them are things that I do manage. It is challenging, I'm not going to lie, and I'm also going to say that if you don't feel like this is a conversation you want to be part of at the moment, then I completely understand that, and feel free to pass by this video and move on to the next, or watch another video from my channel or someone else's channel. Whatever you need to do to support yourself is the most important thing. I do feel, however, called to make this video because I feel that within our community, this kind of video can be really supportive and comforting to folks, especially if they don't have connections in their everyday real life that they can reach out to who are similar minded, or that they can confide in about the challenges that they're coming up against. So I felt called to make it as a sort of an act of service from my heart. So I am genuinely offering this as a support. And I will say as well, although I'm not a mental health practitioner, if anyone is struggling and is in desperate need to talk to someone impartial, then I'm always here. I do read my DMs on Instagram. I don't respond to bots, and I don't respond to people posing as spiritual individuals or readers or fakes or anything like that. I don't respond to those. If you genuinely reach out to me though, I do try to get back to people. And if it's something like this where someone feels really isolated and alone and scared and just like confused, then I'd much rather people reach out and connect, and I'm there if anyone should need support. So before we start, I just want to give some context because this video was actually filmed a couple of months ago and I'm only just getting to edit it because this is what my life as a creator is like. In the end, the video did end up being really very long even after I edited it. What I decided to do, because I also had some very casual chats, is to create a extended part that will be made available on my Patreon to both tiers. This is the first time I've uploaded a sort of extra part to a video on Patreon, and I would love to start creating more video content on Patreon. So please do click over to Patreon if you'd like to become a patron. There are two tiers. There is the Stars and the Moon, which feature my new and full moon forecasts along with shadow work, all the aspects, how to work with them,
a PDF custom tarot spread, different herbs and crystals to work with, different practices and rituals and spell work that you can engage in, and that is the Stars and the Moon tier. The Stars tier is the support tier that includes everything else.
So all that being said, I did just want to touch on a few things before I start, and it's things that have been sort of discussed recently within the community. I saw Radio The Witch of Darklight discussing this earlier today and talking about how there can be this misconception that what creators put on their social media channels is like all that there is. And I suppose I understand how you could get into that trap of thinking that, because especially if you followed someone for a few years, you kind of have that, there's a word for it, where you feel that you're connected to them but they don't actually know you. It's just because you know them and you've been watching them. I can understand why people might sort of assume that they know everything about someone, but literally it's just a 40-minute video, an hour's worth of video, stuff that you can cram into that time. And for me personally, I have a huge long list of video ideas, and I've had them for years since I've started my channel. I've never run out of ideas, but I have burnt out a few times. I haven't been able to make them all and edit them all because I have a very full, very busy life, and I don't get to sit down and film very often. I also don't get a lot of time to edit my videos, so I often will batch film on a weekend, and then I'll be editing those videos for the next couple of months, and those will be the videos that I put out. So it takes me a long time to do this work, and that's why I do consider it to be, you know, a kind of active service, because it is free information essentially. And no, I'm not claiming to be a teacher of any particular tradition, but I have got a number of years of experience under my belt, and I can speak from that experience and, you know, be here to offer suggestions and support and ideas and inspiration. And I can share my thoughts, my ideas, my notions, my musings, my wisdom, the things I've read, the things I've learnt, the things I've experienced. And I think that that's really valuable. And I think that anyone who's creating content on their channels, be it witchy, spiritual, occult, divinatory, whatever, I think it's of value to the community. And I really just want to say that I really do value the creators on these platforms and the work and the time and the energy that they put into what they create. It's really, really valuable. I also want to say that I really am very grateful for the viewers and the people who come back and who are generous in their comments and in their sharing and in their liking and subscribing, etc., and all of those things. And the people obviously who support on Patreon and such, they are absolutely incredible, and there would be no point in making the videos if there wasn't an audience there. And so that is obviously something that is really, really key and really important, and something I very much value. Having said that, trolling is just something I won't tolerate, and unkind comments, any kind of religious dogma, anything like that is just not gonna fly here. I think that it's just interesting when you've had a few years of being within the community and making videos. I've started to be a lot less allowing of people coming into my comments and telling me that I'm doing something wrong, or that, you know, it doesn't look good and that I should do something a different way, because it's like, you know what, this is my channel, I'm doing it for free. If you don't want to watch it, you don't have to watch it, you know. So that is kind of my viewpoint now, that's my perspective. So I just thought that was really, really interesting about how there is this misconception that everything that you know is whittled down to these few minutes. I mean, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that usually I ramble a lot. These chatty videos are long, and usually the videos where I talk about specific elements of the craft are also long, okay? So my Sabbath series, they got longer and longer and longer because I would cram more and more into them and do more and more research, and I think that there's so much value in that. But also, I don't think any practitioner is expected to know everything at any one time, and that is one of the biggest pitfalls that I wish I could avoid. But I think it's within my personality to want to absorb knowledge and to share knowledge and to be erudite and to study and to learn. And when I was at university, I discovered this kind of passion for this. I went to university just outside of London in the UK, and it was a beautiful university. It had like a grade 1 listed building. It was massive, and it was called Founders, and it had these 2 courtyards within it that were like identical, and they were just beautiful. It was actually used as a filming location for, I think it's the 3rd series maybe of You. I don't know if you've ever seen that program. It's a really great program, but nothing to do with the location, but that was at Royal Holloway, University of London. It's in Surrey. It was my university, and it was the most beautiful place, and the library was so magical. I literally would just go into the library and spend hours there, picking out books, reading books, and they'd obviously be related to what I was studying and what I was learning about, but then I'd always just get carried away in other sections, and there's something so enchanting about learning. And so for me, that's always been a passion, and so expanding my witchy occult library has been something of a joy. This is just one of the bookcases that I have with witchy books. I have a whole rack of them over there, and I have a whole bookcase over there, and I have another bookcase in my bedroom as well, and then I have some on my windowsill, and they just kind of keep going. And I also have some downstairs as well. There's a lot, and I definitely need more bookcases, but I can't read them any faster than I am able to, and I wish I could, like, just, you know, read a book really quickly. That's one of the things that I just sort of wish that I could do, but then you kind of miss the point, because you're not supposed to just absorb knowledge and keep it. I feel that it's really important to sit with the wisdom that you learn from a book, and so I think it's really beautiful to take a book slowly and to really digest the information and to let it all assimilate, and then to, you know, to start practicing some of the things within the book, or switch things up. A lot of the practices within the traditional witchcraft books and the folk witchcraft books that I've read, I love to be inspired by those, but I've never really done a ritual by rote, because that's not the way I practice, and that's something that I do love about my practice, and it's something I'm very confident about. And I think that one of the things that supported me to build confidence in that is the fact that when I was really young, I think when I was like 11, I did some spells and some rituals by rote, of course, from books and from the internet. Does anyone remember those Angel Fire websites, by the way? And the little witchy pictures and the like animations, and I just, yeah. So nostalgic. So I used to print off or write down incantations and spells and rituals from the internet sometimes, and I had a couple of books. So I would then, but quite quickly I learned that, oh, this doesn't work for me. I don't like this part of it. And I mean, because everything obviously was very, witchcraft and Wicca were really synonymous in the 90s, and a lot of the books just kind of lump them in together, and it's not clear. But yeah, so I quickly realized that I didn't love the ceremonial kind of vibe of it. Although, having said that, I'm actually very, very interested in reading and learning about Western occult traditions these days, and I'm very interested in certain practices and certain traditions. I know for myself, I'm not ever going to be one of these people. Well, I might change my mind. I know myself, and I don't really think I'm ever going to be one of those people who practices in that way long term, because it didn't work for me back then. But I think the reason that I've gained confidence in that part of my practice is because I learned quite quickly that by just taking what works for me, and by adjusting, making tweakments, intuitively speaking from the heart, speaking words of power as I go through something, is so much more powerful and potent, and I get such great results from those kinds of workings. And that started quite young, I'd say maybe 12 or 13. I think I realized that. So that's the way I would work, and I would always just adapt things to suit me, and I think I built my confidence that way because it worked. So I think that I would always advocate that, and I know that a lot of other practitioners advocate that as well. Even if you do enjoy spell books and look through them and read them for inspiration, it's just lovely to take them out of context sometimes and to use fewer herbs or fewer correspondences. If you don't have a certain crystal, you know, you can go without it. Use a powerful pebble that you find on the beach, or a rock that has significance for you. I really feel that for me, witchcraft is very wild, and it is very much based on the land in which I live, and so for me that's how I thrive in my practice, and that's one area of my practice that I don't feel there is an issue with. But there are a number of ways in which I feel that my practice is lacking, or it's not what I want it to be, or that it's not what it should be in my head. And like, I hate that word should. And I think I should all over myself all the time. So I do think that should is a red flag, because it just is so limiting, and it just destroys any kind of enjoyment in a process. And isn't that the point? that's what I mean about reading the books and savoring them and extracting the wisdom and then assimilating it and making it part of you. And I enjoy so much drawing and painting as well, but I rarely find time for it. But when I do, it is actually a form of meditation and it's soothing in itself. But sometimes it's exhausting to do that, and I feel like I also don't want to be one of these people who is running around trying to get everything done and failing, and also like inducing panic in other people as well, because that's not what I want to do. There's definitely imposter syndrome sometimes, like, oh, I don't know enough, I haven't read enough books about that to talk about that, and I have to read another 20 books about that so that I can talk about that, and or I have to do a course and get certified before I can have any knowledge or wisdom to share about that. And yeah, you know, in certain cases that is true, but in other cases, you know, you can explore and still share what you're doing. But I think that there's a lot of gatekeeping as well within our community, and I think that that scares some people off. But I don't think any practitioner is expected to know everything about every single tradition and every single practice, because people do specialize. In my practice, I have a number of things that I'm more focused on than others. You know, I'm interested in things like runes, and I have a set that I created myself out of seashells years ago, but I have never really delved into learning the meanings. Sometimes I connect to one of the runes and utilize that within candle work, but quite rarely. And I do have an OM stave set as well, but I haven't memorized those. It was part of my plan to do that. I'm interested in them, but they're peripheral, because my focus is connecting to spirits, ancestral spirits and spirits of the land, connected to plant spirits, and building up my relationship and connection to a number of different plant spirit allies, as well as herbalism, learning certain herbal preparations and such, and just honing my skills in that area, as well as I do work quite a lot of candle workings, rituals that are very free-flowing and very authentic and come from the heart, to and with and for the deities I work with, the Morrigan and Lilith. And recently I've been working with them both. They've both been kind of coming in. Astrology as well. I've been on my astrology course for a while, and I'm still working through it. Creating tarot spreads, creating full and new moon forecasts that are on my Patreon, which I just love doing. I obviously love tarot and oracle, so I do incorporate that into my practice. I really like scrying as well, and I want to get more into connecting to unknown spirits as well.
I also practice a lot of shadow work as well, and there are always lots and lots of shadow work practices and prompts within my forecast that I upload to Patreon for the full and new moons. And in addition to that, I also work quite a lot on the astral with spirit flight and lucid dreaming, and so there's quite a lot of that that is embedded into my practice that's also quite private, that I don't share all that much about.
Like, these are areas of my practice that I am deeply invested in developing, and then I'll read around a number of topics. But I think that the imposter syndrome comes in when you feel you don't know enough or anything or something about a particular topic that maybe someone asks you about, or maybe that someone else is talking about. But that's okay. I think that's absolutely normal, and I just want to reassure you as well, like, that it takes time to build up wisdom, and also you're not going to remember everything. There are a ton of books I've read, but I can't remember all the details, and someone else will talk about it because they've read it recently. I was like, oh yeah, I had forgotten about that bit in the book because I read it years ago and I forgot that bit. It will slip, but that's okay as well. And also, that's one of the beautiful things about keeping a magical journal or a book of shadows or a grimoire. I don't personally have a big book of shadows that has things like correspondences in it. Instead, I have a number of different working journals, which are A5 gridded paper journals, and I use them for my tarot spreads. I have a special journal actually for Lilith. I have a special journal for the Morrigan. I have a arty book of shadows, which is like an A4, which has some art pieces from within ritual and outside of ritual, and it also has some channeled messages from dreams that I have then depicted as pieces of art and written up downloads and such. And then I have another smaller book, which is like a formulary, within which I include my own recipes, and most of them I have not put in there because they're scrawled on lots of bits of paper that are within this like massive ring binder, or within some other folders somewhere. So I have a drawer with like ring binders and folders in it, and most of my stuff is in there, and it's not easily accessible. You know, I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to like putting them all in a book. So sometimes I do that and sometimes I don't. I've kept sketchbooks since I was a teenager, but in my 20s I stopped recording so much and I stopped doing art. I had a period of time where my mental health was very, very low. I was working in London. I was out of the house for 14 hours a day, commuting to work, and so I had like no time, and my life was pretty bleak, to be honest. I have a bit more time than that now because I work from home, but I do work. I have 2 small children. I have a 5-year-old son who's very shortly about to be 6. In fact, he might be 6 when you're watching this. And my daughter is 8. She was 8 this May. And so my kids are still little, but they are challenging in terms of the fact that they are people in this world and they have voices, and there are some challenging behaviors that we experience. They're kids, and it's actually one of the hardest things I've ever had to do to be a parent, and I think that it doesn't leave a lot of time for the other stuff. And so sometimes I can't get to a particular ritual I want to do, and I will confess I have lists on my phone of do this ritual, do that ritual, and then I won't get to it. But then there'll be some things that I'm like, oh, I need to do that. And while the kids are at after school club, I finished work, and actually now is a perfect time. So there'll be moments, like little pockets like that I seize, but also sometimes you don't feel like it, and that's also okay. I will just say I think that this video has been very rambly and I haven't been very structured with it. So I really hope that that's okay, and that this is like providing some kind of support. I really feel like though the way I'm talking and the way I'm kind of just going blah at you is quite reflective of how I feel in my head, right? So I just feel chaotic a lot of the time. I feel overwhelmed a lot of the time, and I think that I go from everything is okay to like, oh my gosh, like I'm panicking because there's so much to do quite quickly, you know. And so I have to just be aware of that, and that is part of who I am as a person, but it's also partly to do with some of the mental health challenges I've had over the years, and I just have to hold myself with that and know that that's okay, that's who I am, and I just have to have compassion for myself, hold myself as I move through those moments where I feel a bit like wobbly or a bit panicky. And my husband's really great because he'll just reassure me. He'll be like, we've done well today, we've managed to get this done, we've managed to get this done, we've worked together on this. He'll soothe me down and calm me down, and he's such a pillar of support, really, my husband is, and he's a lot calmer than me. So that is so important and nourishing. And I think that more than anything else, you know, there are times in your life when you won't be able to practice. Like I said, with some of the period in my 20s, I was like in the rat race in London, and it was absolutely brutal. I was also being bullied at one of my jobs, and that was horrible. It was my boss who was bullying me, and I just felt so lonely. I felt isolated, and then I was doing this long commute. I was absolutely exhausted, and yeah, I just couldn't do anything else. I couldn't function. And then on the weekends I would bake because it soothed me, and I'd write out my recipes. I had a little book of recipes, so I did a lot of like kitchen witchery back then, and I desperately wanted to get into the garden, but I was scared of like getting it wrong and such. And my parents always had a garden, and my grandparents always had gardens, and so it was something that was naturally like drawing me, but I didn't know what to do. And again, like I had to build up my knowledge. I'm still not like an expert gardener, but I have had a few gardens now in my own houses that we've bought, and I'm just experimenting, really, just going with it. I joined Abby the Witch's recent Witches Alley, and it was just lovely, and I think that that's what Abby actually said. She just tries something, and that's basically what I'm doing. I have some books as well that I like to refer to, but I don't have time to sit down and read a whole gardening textbook from cover to cover, so that's not something I'm dedicated to, you know, especially because I'm trying to get through a number of other occult tomes as well, and so it's like there's got to be a balance there. But I do think this is rambly, but if nothing else, I hope it just serves to show like this is where my brain is at, and this is chaotic, this is how I feel. There is definitely a lot of imposter syndrome within the community, I will say that, and I think that it is insidious because I think also there are quite a lot of very creative people within spirituality, and I think that a lot of creative people also have this kind of tendency to want to, not necessarily always perfectionism, some definitely. I feel like I have a tendency to veer towards wanting to create something that's perfect or something to be perfect, and I worry that it's not going to be. Definitely there's attention to detail, there's care, there's precision there, and I think that those kinds of people are genuinely more empathic, they're more sensitive to these things, and I also think they're potentially more vulnerable to feeling these kinds of things as well. So I don't know if that's rooted in anything scientifically backed, but that's just my impression of it. So what is imposter syndrome exactly? So the Oxford English Dictionary defines imposter syndrome as a noun, the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So people suffering from imposter syndrome may be at increased risk of anxiety. Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. And I think they kind of go hand in hand a little bit. Like, if you're already an anxious type of person, you're likely going to be feeling this. And I think as well, because there's so much to learn within the occult and spiritual and pagan spaces, I think it's just naturally there. And I think that maybe instead of trying to fight it, one of the things that just soothes me is just to be like, okay, yeah, this is a feeling I have right now. I'm a human being going through this experience, and I'm going to hold myself through this because it's uncomfortable, but you know what? I'm okay and I'm safe. And I'm not going to do a test. I'm not in any trouble with anyone, and I know my practice is genuine. I know I'm authentic, and I know the experience that I have, and no one else will know that, and no one else can take that away from me. And people can troll and people can be rude, but at the end of the day, they're going to do that anyway. So I just feel for myself, if I experience those thoughts of I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough, or whatever, that I don't deserve this, you know, attention or success or whatever, then that will lead to my feeling insignificant, inauthentic, like a fake, a fraud. And I know that's not true. So, but it leads to those things, and then that will lead to this kind of feeling of panic and this kind of like fight or flight or fawn or freeze response that we always get when we get to these anxious states. And I think that the best thing for me is just to meet it and just to say, yes, I see you. And it's just a doubt, and it's okay. And just to know as well that other people experience this is so comforting. Not that I want other people to be going through this, because it can be really challenging, it can be really hard, but just know you're not the only one, and everyone has gone through this. And I think every single creator, no matter how big they are, no matter how much experience, even someone who's not a creator, no matter how much experience a pagan or a witch or an occultist or a magician or a sorcerer has, I think that they experience this. And if they don't, then that might be because they're one of those people who are very, very secure in themselves, or it might be because they're overly secure in themselves. Not that I'm maligning self-confidence, because it's very, very important, but there is a very, very big difference between someone who has self-esteem and who is confident in themselves and their abilities and their talents and their knowledge and their wisdom and their skills, and someone who is arrogant and believes that they are right and that everyone else is wrong. I also think there's quite a lot of that within the community as well, and I would just say I think that there has been some talk about red flags in the community as well recently, and I think that that's one of them. Like, just to run a mile, if someone tells you, no, it's this way only, this is the only way, I'm right, you're wrong, let's just run a mile, really. So I wanted to be really, really real, and I wanted to tell you all the ways that I feel like my practice is not how it should be, and what I think my practice should be instead.
So I just want to go back to what I said about the word should and how it implies this pressure. And also that I just want to state before this that this is me being really honest about the insecurities I have. And it's not to say that these insecurities are true or based in fact, or that are justified indeed, and that if you have these thoughts and feelings as well, I don't want you hearing me saying that I have them too to sort of make you feel that they're even more relevant, because the whole point is that they're not always rooted in fact, and they're not always sensible or realistic. They're not honest, they're not true. And so we have these insecurities, and that's the point. So I'm sharing these, but they're not necessarily correct.
I don't want to induce any worry in anyone. This is more of an exercise to show you the doubts I have around myself and my practice and the things I wish I could change, but I'm just having to accept time limitations and my personality and anxiety and all the things that make up my life and my experience here in this body as this human being. I don't think I use tarot enough or enough of my decks. I will say that that is probably since last year when I had a little bit of a dip. First, I struggled to keep up with journaling that I wanted to. I didn't always journal for like daily readings, but if it was an important, significant reading, then I would. And I was finding I was doing quite a lot of those, and then I couldn't keep up with it. And then I kind of just had a bit of a burnout and found I couldn't keep up. Then I struggled because I was experiencing some other things going on in my life and I just really didn't want to read the cards. I didn't want to hear what they had to say because I'd already heard it and I'd already asked the questions. I do think that there's an argument for both sides of that coin, not reading about the same thing too frequently and or a second time or a third time, versus actually do read again for the same thing. Because I think that my argument for it is that situations will change, and I feel that what you see in the cards is basically if things are going to continue as they are, you know, it's a reflection of what could be if nothing changes. But things change, and also there are other factors that the cards and you can't control or foresee necessarily, and so people have free will, people will do things that they are unexpected, and so those things will happen, and then the reading might take a different turn or have a different emphasis or have a different energy around it. And I think that there's value in that, but definitely asking the same questions over and over again day after day without anything much changing in the real world, in consensus reality, I think is probably problematic, especially if you keep pulling cards for the same question. Sometimes I do pull 2, 3 or 4 cards for one question and I read them all as one, like as it's part of a story, but other times it will just be one card per question, and sometimes a couple of cards will fall out and I'll take those. So I'm very intuitive with my reading structure, and I go with the flow with my reading structure in that sense. When I talk about intuitive reading, I do not mean with no books, because I definitely believe in learning and understanding the meanings and the significance behind them. The next I have on the list is I don't get where I plan to get to, or that I hope to get to quick enough in terms of study and practice. Again, I think I've talked about this. Like, I have a number of books I haven't read, and I keep buying new books, or I keep getting sent books, and I can't keep up. But I want to read them all, I really genuinely do. I just haven't gotten around to them because I can't read fast enough. So I usually read in the evenings, and sometimes I'm really tired, and so that is challenging. So it's hard to keep up with the reading of books, but it's something I love, it's something I'm dedicated to, so I try my best with that. But sometimes when I'm unwell, either mentally or physically, or burnt out, I have to take a break from that, and that's okay.
Again, I can see that this insecurity is not rooted in fact very obviously, because this is a fear that is inconsequential. It doesn't actually match up to the reality of what it means to have a spiritual practice, because you're never going to stop learning. I myself feel like I'm a forever student. Yes, I have been practicing since I was 11 and through my teens, and now I'm in my 30s, and I've had a lot of experience, made a lot of mistakes, and understand certain things I didn't before, but there is no way that I'm going to stop learning. So you're always learning through books, through conversations with other practitioners and meeting other practitioners and practices. So there is no end to the study. So this is not based in fact at all.
Too scattered and overwhelmed. Well, I've talked about that, and in fact I think it just comes across very well in this video. I was actually thinking about that earlier today, because I have had and noticed a few of these moments where I've, today even, where I've been feeling really good, feeling okay, like feeling positive, and then a couple of hours later feeling just sort of panicky about things that I have to do and not enough time. And that's definitely a thing that I have always had hanging over me. And so I have been really trying to follow my intuition and my gut and my heart and just the flow of existing, and just to really enjoy every single moment. And you know, I guess it's presence and it's mindfulness, of course, and meditation absolutely supports with that if you can meditate. You know, there are limitations to that as well. I'm trying my very best to just do what I want when I want, so I might have to clean, but if I feel like having a cup of coffee in the garden first, then that's really important for me to do that. And then if I feel like going for a walk after I finish cleaning, but I have a whole cupboard that I said to myself I was going to organise, I will go for a walk. I will take the dog for a walk, because that's what I feel like doing at the moment. So, you know, all of these things, the things that have to get done, they will get done. but I'm only one person. I only have so many hours in the day, and I have a lot on my plate with running a house, having 2 kids, having a job, you know, having my own spiritual practice, having a YouTube channel, keeping up there, and then the courses that I'm studying, etc, etc. There's only so much. And I will say as well, if anyone else has kids and can relate to this, the school, they sometimes send like 20 emails on a weekend. So on a Friday evening, they'll send like 20 emails through. If you have more than, you know, 1 kid, it's just like email after email, and it can get ridiculous. It's like becoming like an admin for your kids. I feel like a bad witch when I'm tired with life and kids and everything and mental health. There you go. That's it. Yeah, I couldn't put it any better than that. I miss opportunities for magic. So sometimes I will sort of scold myself if I kind of missed an opportunity to connect in with a plant spirit, or to enjoy a moon or something like that because I had to do something else, or I was obligated to be somewhere else. And also that goes for those lists of things that I've planned, like, oh, make this oil and practice this meditation, try this technique for astral travel, and perform this ritual and do this tarot reading, etc. You know, I've got that list, and some of those things don't get done, but then sometimes there's that odd one that just happens because it is magic. And so whilst I have that on my list, I miss opportunities for magic, it's not always true, because I think there's magic in the moments that I do capture, and not everyone can do all the things that they want all the time, like all the things that are on their list they just can't do. Sometimes I don't find the time, or I forget to make time for meditation or breathwork or Reiki. Yes, like I try to meditate every day. I don't manage to every day. I meditate every evening, like right before I sleep, but I like to meditate first thing or in the morning time because it is better for me during the day, I feel. But I do meditate for a while last thing at night, and then I will put on some kind of binaural beat or something that will support me with dream work or with astral travel, whatever it is I'm doing. I won't do astral travel or lucid dream work or anything like that every night, you know, because that is exhausting in itself. You know, you can wake up after that kind of thing and feel like you have been awake and running around in your dreams, not sleeping, basically. Oh, this one's really, really real. I feel bad and not good and unworthy. Ouch. Okay. I mean, there's absolutely no justification for that at all, really. I mean, the next thing I've written is mental health, and so I feel like that just goes into it, really. I am definitely one of those people who has always felt like I'm lacking in some way, and that I have to prove myself, that I need validation somehow from somebody else, and that someone needs to approve of me in order for me to actually be liked. And I think it's a human thing, but then I also think it's intensified by a number of circumstances and situations that have occurred in my life. And I also think that girls, especially of my generation, were conditioned in schools particularly to be nice, sweet, subservient, quiet, reserved, well-behaved, good at everything at school, to get good grades, to be a good little girl, just to be in general like sweet and subservient. I'm just pushing against so much of that now. This all comes from the patriarchy, and it's all just a wound from Eve, an Eve wound that I feel has just like pervaded my life, you know, and it's come into my life in so many different ways. I'm just pushing back, basically, but not in the way that it will fester and turn into other problems, but just to really step into that authenticity and that ownership of self and that pride in myself as well, and have that sovereignty and that gumption, because I do have that. I do have a deep well of self-esteem somewhere buried down, but it's very hard to access sometimes. So I've been working on that. I think Morrigan for years has been supporting me with boundaries and sovereignty, and Lilith has come in to particularly shake up and uproot some of these fundamental roots of what is causing some of this in me. It feels sad to look at this, it feels sad to read it out that I feel that way, but I think I've got a lot more of a grasp on why and how this is now. I mean, I wrote this list maybe 9 months ago, so I think I've got more of a grasp on why some of these things are, and also how I'm working through those things rather than pushing against them in a forceful way. I am accepting of those things, that they're there, I'm not going to change that, but I'm working through them, and I'm definitely rejecting the patriarchy, absolutely. I am behind on Patreon and on YouTube. I don't have enough time to offer tarot readings or any more content, etc. I mean, I really am. I'm so behind on answering questions and responding to comments, but that's because, like I said, I just don't have a lot of time. I do put other people's videos on YouTube, and I sometimes comment on other people's videos, but Usually I will have YouTube on in the background while I'm pottering, while I'm cooking or cleaning or tidying up or whatever it is. That's how I usually consume the media. It's usually I'm just listening, and then maybe sometimes I will watch some in bed. If the kids manage to go to bed early, then after that I will watch some videos, that kind of thing. But I have very, very little time to get to that, and it makes me feel very bad because I feel like if people are taking the time to comment, I should be commenting back, but it's just not something I can always do. And so for that, I do extend my gratitude for the comment and just say that, you know, I see the comments, I do read them. I can't always respond. Social media and comparison, I mean, it can be quite irritating to say the least, to see how the algorithm puts you in a box as well. Like, the algorithm is obviously king, and it's also very unfair, and I really don't think the algorithm likes me very much because I jump around, I talk about a lot of different things. It's difficult, but I just have to be true to me and make the content that I would want to see, make the content that I feel is valuable, and make the content that is natural and authentic for me to create. So that's what I'm doing. I do often struggle with that social media and the comparison and the again, the fear of judgment, and also just like, you put your heart and soul into a video, has real value and real meaning to it, and it doesn't get any views. And then the video that you do about witchcraft tools that you've hauled, it does do really well. And so that kind of thing is obviously frustrating. And then burnout, which I have had a few times. It can just be exhausting and very debilitating, and I think that one of the best things is probably just to take a step back and relax and rest. And you know, if that really doesn't feel like something you can do, a lovely thing to do instead is to watch YouTube, or to watch a witchy film, or to watch some witchy documentaries. Some you can find on YouTube actually. Get an old witchcraft book that you've read before that you love, that you can thumb through and get inspiration from, or a completely new book to you that it's like a new topic that you haven't delved into, something that you're really curious about. Delve into something that is different, even if you had a number of other books on your book list, you know, and that's another one, like starting one book and then starting another book and then starting another book, and you're like, I'm reading like 5 books at once and I just want to finish one of them, but I'm just jumping around, and it frustrates me, it aggravates me, it like grates at my witchy soul, but I can't help it because I'm wanting to, like, but that's not when I'm in burnout. But if you're on burnout, I think as well, maybe reading a novel about witchcraft or witches is a really lovely way to have it in your life and in your mind and in your world. Another thing that is just really nice to do is, again, if it's accessible to you, is to be outside, just to spend more time outside, to spend some time, if you can, if the weather's good, if it's accessible to you, to lie down in the grass, or to sit in the field, or by a river, or by a lake, or by a stream, or by the ocean, to sit or to lie, to connect in with nature and the spirits around you. I mean, I think some of the most spiritually profound, magical moments in my life have been those moments when I've been connecting to spirit. And I remember when I was 16, I think, I did an art project. I spent a whole day at the ocean on my own, and I'd had a number of dreams, and I'd created art from this project, and I spent a whole day at the ocean just connecting with the spirit of the ocean and connecting to the land, sea and sky, and cleansing my body with the salty air, and just being in presence, being in communion and that sacred reciprocity. That it was so beautiful, and just meditating, and it was one of the most beautiful, most profound experiences of my entire witchcraft life. And it was literally just sitting by the ocean basically, and that was when I was a teenager. So I remember that with such joy, and I had so many downloads during that time, and then afterwards in dreams again as well. And it all started with that one dream I had. I knew what I needed to do. I'm really glad that I was able to turn part of my witchcraft practice into what I was studying and what I was working on. It was really, really wonderful to be able to create magic with the art that I was doing as a project, you know. And art witchery as well. I think drawing, painting, crafting is really therapeutic. If you don't like to sit and meditate in that way, and you struggle with things like visualization and stuff, just creating art is a really, really lovely thing to do. The magic is imbued in that art, and it's manifesting through the art, and that's just so profound and beautiful. That's a lovely thing if you are a creative person like that to get into. Like I said, if you're burnt out and you're really, really burnt out, I think that probably the best thing to do is just to take a step back, really. It's not going to be the end of the world. You know, I did this in my 20s. I did just have to step back because I was going to London every day from Buckinghamshire, commuting. It was like a couple of hours either side each day. So it was like 4 hours traveling, and then I was at work, and it was just brutal. So the only witchcraft I really did was baking and imbuing my intention that way, and just spending time outside, really. That's all I did. So I really think that just stripping back your practice, if you experience any of these issues or challenges kind of on a regular basis, just stripping your practice back to basics, really, and working on things like protection magic and shielding and warding. And I have a video that I recently uploaded, and it's been a long time coming, I can tell you, because I've been planning it for years, but I just only got round to it this year. I'm also going to be creating some more 101 videos. I have made a shielding video as well, which you might see already before this video. So that is more personal shields. There's so much value in deepening your practice in those ways, deepening your energetic practice, deepening your intuition, deepening your psychic skills, etc. in these areas if you can. And then just do what you need to do and know that it's okay. And you are no less of a witch if you can't perform spells for 6 months or a year or 2 years. Like, it makes you no less of a witch. It's in your heart. Yes, witchcraft is a practice, but you know, if you have practiced and you plan again to practice, and it's still part of what you believe, and it's fundamentally part of you, and you're living an animist spiritual life you're connected in, it doesn't matter if you have to take a step back. Like, it still is intrinsic in you. And you know, some people will want to step back and want to just review it and maybe step away from it completely, and that's fair enough and legitimate. And every person's path is so unique and so different, so diverse, and I just want to say that. And a focus on self-love and self-care practices as well. You know, I've been focusing a lot on self-love and self-care for the past couple of years because the shadow work has been so intense, the inner child work has been intense, the mental health work has been intense, and they all come together. The inner work is so profound and important. For me, I feel that's what the witch in me needs and is all about. Know thyself. I talked about this in my recent video as well. Like, know thyself is a pillar of witchcraft and within the witch, from the witch's pyramid, but originally from Elixirs Levi's transcendental magic, as well as the Eleusinian mysteries and the Oracle of Delphi, and it's just absolutely fundamental. So I also think self-care and self-love practices, I know that people poo-poo them, but you know, whatever it is that you do to feel good, even if it's chilling out on the sofa watching a funny TV show, or you know, something that's nothing to do with witchcraft, it's just fun. If that's what you need to do and that's your self-care, then do it. I completely believe in there being magic and beauty and power in that. Just really, really focus on those things. I really love taking a spiritual bath and a cleansing bath as well, and self-love baths have been so healing for me. Healing wounds and trauma. Now, this is not going to be suitable for all people, but if you're in a place where it's safe for you to do this, I do think that shadow work, healing work, trauma work with a therapist, with a counsellor, a medical health practitioner, professional who can support you with this, it's a really, really good thing to do if you're in the right place for it. And I know from myself it has transformed my life so much. Professional support is vital though, and if you don't feel safe, I really don't think that you should engage. Meditation, again, you don't have to do it every day. It's sometimes not easy to do it every day, but if you can squeeze in 5 minutes a day, it's much better to do 5 minutes a day than it is to do like an hour once a week. So just fit it in whenever you can. At the moment for me, it's consistently before bed, but I would like to get to a place where I can do it before bed as well as in the morning. Sometimes I can, but it's not every day. Every day before bed is what I am able to do because the kids are usually up really early. That's my thing. But meditation has been so profoundly supportive for me over the years. Audiobooks is another really, really great way that you can get some witchiness in your life, and whether that be like fiction related to witchcraft and spirituality or not, or whether it be non-fiction and something that you're wanting to study. There are so many great titles on Audible. I would also like to mention Aura. Aura is an incredible award-winning app, and I have had Aura on my phone for a couple of months now, and I have just absolutely loved tapping into Aura for meditations. You can put in certain preferences and such so it knows about what you like. It has sound healing, meditations, breath work, life coaching, it has podcasts, it has a work and wellness area, different stories and therapies, music, ASMR, it has a number of series as well, and there's also prayer and hypnosis. It's really, really great for learning about different areas of things that you want to dive into and developing certain things. There's a program here recommended for me. It's an 11-day program for burnout, and then gratitude program, stress relief, dealing with anger, peaceful morning, hypnosis for sleep, sleep, calming anxiety, breathwork for sleep, dream sleep. There are programs as well for psychic development. There are astral travel journeys. There are lucid dream journeys. There's just so much on here. There are coaches. There are lives. It's just been really, really beautiful. So usually I will tap into one of these aura meditations in the morning, and I like them because they have different times as well. So it tells you what the time of each is. So if you have 5 minutes, you can do a 5-minute meditation. Sometimes there's breathwork sessions that are just 3 or 4 minutes, you know, if you're like in a pinch, if you're in a public place and you're having a moment and you need to just get back to the breath, you can do that. And I just really, really like it for the reason that you don't get the ads that you do on YouTube, and I think that that is really powerful and supportive and profound. And so I've absolutely loved this app, and I will recommend it very much. And if you click the link below, you can get a free trial as well as 25% off. So that link is in my description box, and it's unique to me and for my viewers. So do that if you'd like to get a free trial and 25% off. It's a really, really great app, a great resource. I'm thrilled to have it. Another thing I absolutely love is Yoga Nidra, and I have been learning about and practicing Yoga Nidra now for a couple of years on and off, but I've not studied it in depth. I've not taken a course, but I've just absolutely really taken to it. I've just loved it. It's a type of therapeutic meditation, and there are a number of different ways and techniques that I'm not entirely au fait with, but one of the most popular ones I've experienced is where you're taken through a kind of guided journey and you sort of isolate areas of your body. Each kind of relaxes in turn, and it's a bit like, you know, when you tense and then release, but it's more than that. You're sort of focusing on all of the sensations in each like little part of your body, and it sort of puts you into a place where your body's all tingly, and it's actually a really, really great place to start if you are looking to get into more astral projection. I also love to do tapping, emotional freedom technique tapping, EFT, and I have taken part in some sessions with a professional tapping teacher and absolutely loved it. There is an order in which you tap. You can just speak out how you're feeling and then talk about how you're safe, and it just helps to like reassure you. I mean, if you search for that on YouTube, you'll see some examples. It's an incredible approach. There's tons of free meditations and free music, vibrational music and binaural beats on YouTube. So just search for like whatever it is, 342 or 528 hertz, I think it is, frequency vibrational music for whatever, or you could write meditation for anxiety, sleep, or something like that, and you'll get meditations from Jason Stevenson and Darksea and Michael Seeley. Those are 3 of my favorites. And then there are some other really great ones that I never remember the names of, but there are loads of really, really great resources for free meditations. I just had to switch over my battery. It is evening time, so I have a glass of wine and I have chopped apple. I do this sometimes for self-love. Not that I'm advocating drinking, but you know, if you want to drink in moderation, that's absolutely fine. So anywho, there are also some other things that I love to take, including tinctures. So I create my own nettle tincture. It is so supportive for my anxiety, my mental health. It's also really supportive for like allergies as well, and it's really helped me with stress and panic, and it's just amazing. I feel like as well, when you get to know a plant, it does things for you that is not written in the books. Like it just gets to know you and it gets in, and there's so much wisdom, and I've got a tight bond with nettles now, and I love being stung. It's like I see it as an offering. I also have a Damiana tincture that I have been taking for most of this year. I love Damiana tea and such as well. If I'm going to do a particular type of astral travel or a particular type of dream work, but it doesn't always suit everyone. It can be quite stimulating, but putting Damiana with mugwort I found has brought some good results for me. I also have a mugwort tincture as well as the tea, and I have one mugwort tincture that is with fresh plant matter, and I have another mugwort tincture with dried plant matter. I recently made the fresh, so I'm going to be comparing the two. I also have a homemade ashwagandha tincture because I was taking that for hormonal regulation anyway, so I decided to make my own, and it's very good. I have a St. John's wort tincture as well. That was not homemade, that was one I purchased, and that is good for anxiety and depression, of course. It's a really, really good soother. Just is comforting, it's soothing, just like CBD as well, which I do also like to have and I take occasionally just under the tongue. It's one of the oral suspensions. It's like a peppermint oil, and it's just, oh, it just chills you out. Like, man, if I'm going to do something that I'm kind of freaked out about, I just put CBD under my tongue and I'm good. I absolutely love that. I have a smoke blend that I created with cacao and damiana and mugwort. So my husband occasionally will get some tobacco. He likes to roll his own, and he doesn't smoke regularly, but he likes to when it's warm. And so sometimes if we have some friends over, we might have one. I created a smoke blend for myself with cacao, and obviously that's quite powdery, but then the other herbs as well. You don't get much cacao in it, but it's just sort of like in it. All the herbs are kind of rolled in this cacao, so you get this sort of beautiful, like smooth finish with the smoke. I find it really, really sacred, and it's a really, really beautiful way to enjoy the plant medicine. So I do enjoy smoking my personal smoke blend occasionally. I love hot chocolate, and I have a way that I make an organic cacao. I have made it in a number of different ways with my own chocolate that I made from organic cacao and such, and I have a recipe on my channel where I made my own rose honey infused chocolates. I have made chocolate quite a lot over the years. It's one of the things that I really enjoyed doing with cacao butter and such, but I can't always make my own chocolate. But on the day-to-day, I have some organic cacao powder, and I like maple syrup with it, sometimes a bit of honey, like manuka honey, local raw honey, or like a manuka honey. I would like to mix it all up with some oat milk, and it's just yum. And sometimes I'll add the CBD in as well, and it's just like pepperminty, like CBD, like I can just feel it right now on the cacao, and it's just so heartwarming, so heart-opening, and I just love it. And the rose as well, like rose is so nice to infuse in that, so I have been known to add some of my rose honey elixir into my hot chocolate as well. And so my rose honey elixir is made from obviously rose petals and some local honey and brandy, and it is again like a real heart-soothing tonic. Well, it's an elixir, so elixirs generally are an alcohol like a brandy with the honey, and it sweetens it. Again, I just take it under my tongue or just on the tongue. It's just really, really lush. I love it. So then herbal teas, like one of my favorite herbal teas is a peppermint tea. I also discovered this incredible herbal tea from Aveda. I think it's called their comforting tea. Essentially, it's got basil, leaf, peppermint, fennel seeds. It has licorice root, and I am not a licorice person. I do not like it. I tend to go for pucker when I'm buying the tea bags. Honestly, if you want to do herbal tea in tea bags, that's perfect, especially if it's fair trade, and you know, I prefer to have it organic, but absolutely tea bags are perfectly fine. So peppermint is one of my favorites. I really also enjoy a jasmine tea, a green jasmine tea, or jasmine flowers dried. I have a number of different teas that I enjoy that's just very soothing. Sometimes damiana and mugwort, and sometimes just mugwort, and it is nice to mix it up and go with what feels good in the moment. So I mentioned bath rituals and self-love baths. That's kind of, you add what you wish, chant how you wish, derobe how, you know, it's all just a very intuitive thing for me. I mean, I do like to put in some rose quartz. I have some yoni eggs, and I have some rough rose quartz. Again, not all crystals are suitable for water. The quartz family tend to be suitable, but do your research. It's nice to add rose petals, and sometimes to make like one of those little bags that hang over the tap so you don't have all the stuff. But to be honest, I just chuck it all in and then scoop it out afterwards. It's a bit more time consuming, but I love the way it looks. I add in maybe some coconut oil, some Epsom salt, some pink Himalayan salt, and the herbs, and chant into it maybe sometimes an essential oil, a few essential oils mixed with a base oil, like a sweet almond oil. Just delightful and delicious, and you can create an oil for yourself ahead of time if you wish. Some of the oils that I've created on my channel might be suitable. So I have an attraction, self-love, amor kind of spell oil that I create, that I anoint myself with. It kind of is like an all-rounder because it's self-love and it's attraction, but it's also glamour. It does it all really, and it enables me to do what I need to do. I also see so much value in inner child kind of comforts, and I've been doing, as I said, a lot of inner child work recently. And so things like cuddly toys. When I lost my pussycat earlier this year, I had already ordered actually a Pusheen cat shaped like a cinnamon roll, and it arrived the afternoon that we had to take her to the vets and have her put down, sadly. It was just so sad. She was very, very sick. She had a tumour that was infected, and it had spread, and it was really the only thing that we could do. It was very sad, but that was just such a comfort. I mean, really, you can't compare it, because I felt her lingering after as well for a few weeks, but I was crying every day, just kind of non-stop. I couldn't stop crying, and eventually I'm just looking at her picture. I just had to tell her, you know, that I love her and that she's okay to go on a journey on and do her thing, you know, and that I'll be okay, because I think she was sort of staying with me. I feel kind of emotional So then walking in nature, sitting in nature, walking obviously if it's accessible to you, putting your hands or your feet or your back, whatever, on a tree, grounding, etc. Energetic work, that centering, grounding work, putting your feet in grass, your hands in grass, putting your back to the earth, any part of you that you can. I am going to be doing a video on grounding and centering as well at some point soon, because that is one that I've prepared already. Gifting yourself as well, things like flowers or a book that you've been looking to read, anything like reading yourself poetry, things like that. I really like romancing myself. There's a book called Romancing the Ordinary that I talked about in a book tour, and that book has been with me since I was a teenager, and it is such a magical book without being a book about magic at all. I mean, there are a couple of spells in there, but it's more like poetry and literature, and there's like an entry for every day or every few days, and so you just read through it kind of chronologically throughout the year, or you can like pick up wherever you are. But there's always beautiful recipes. It's just beautiful practices for falling in love with yourself and your world and the way that you live, and it's just so beautiful. I love that book. That's by Sarah Ban-Breathnick. It's called Romancing the Ordinary. I highly recommend. And then, you know, the question, what brings you joy, and that whole KonMari method, I think it extends beyond the clothes and the stuff, doesn't it, and the purging of stuff. It extends beyond that. I think many people have talked about the spiritual aspect of Marie Kondo and how she does seem to have an inherent spiritual energy to her, and her ethos seems to be sort of steeped in that. But what brings joy, and I guess it sort of feeds into what I was saying about me trying my best to do what I need to do in each moment that feels aligned and that will serve me the most, and that feels like the most heart-centered, the most nourishing for me, and that's what I will do. And then coming into that as well, saying no and knowing your boundaries and not allowing others to kind of step over your boundaries. And I think that putting boundaries in place and actually having them in place is really hard, because sometimes you think you make yourself a rule, but someone will say something and then that rule just comes right down and you're like, what? So it really takes time to build them up. And also, like, if you are putting new boundaries in place with people who have been overstepping boundaries or taking advantage for a long time, they're not going to be happy about it. So it's a really challenging thing to do, but very important. Bottom line, if they won't respect your boundaries, that is too far. But again, that is a conversation that is nuanced as well, because having a boundary doesn't mean that you expect them to change, but it's just if they behave a certain way towards you, that's when your boundary comes into place. It's just about that boundary that protects you, that shields you. So saying no, cancelling plans if you need to, doing what is right for you when it's right for you, doing what you want. If you don't want to see certain people and you feel that you have to, you feel obligated, why? If they aren't treating you well, then perhaps they're not for your highest good. Perhaps they're not aligned for you. Perhaps it's gone as far as it's going to go, and now you need to allow that to just be what it is and to let go of that. It's very real talk, really, isn't it? Clearing your schedule and making some time, taking time off, really doing what you want to do. So even if you've got a sink full of dishes to wash, just having a cup of tea and reading that magazine instead, you know, and or reading whatever it is you want, or watching whatever it is you want, or meditating, or doing yoga, or having a bath, or going for a walk, or connecting to that tree, or making an oil, or doing whatever it is, painting a picture, doing whatever it is that you need to do in that moment. And that's what's key, really. So another thing that goes hand in hand with that is switching off social media. I've talked about that on this channel before, and the dopamine release that you get, but how the dopamine keeps on going, then you're just wired. Definitely just switch off whatever's right for you. I talked about herbs and aromatherapy. Obviously, I have an animist paradigm and worldview, and I really do believe in that sacred reciprocity. I believe in offerings, and I believe in getting to know a plant, ally before you connect to it and ask it to support you in a certain application. There are essential oils, there are herbs available, and you can lean into them and talk to them and ask them for their support with something. Sometimes you'll get a yes, sometimes you may get a not sure, sometimes you might get a hard no, and it's just listening and being open to that and to exploring that connection, and just remembering to treat the plant spirit allies as you would wish to be treated, you know? So with aromatherapy, it can be incredibly healing just to have them in a burner, you know, on top of a burner, and you might want to add them to wax or to like an oil. And you definitely want to look into like the dilution ratios, etc. That's really important, and just to be safe. I like to do candle gazing, candle scrying, so lighting a candle and just breathing, gazing into it. Lighting incense and lying in bed, I did a lot of that at the end of last year when I wasn't very well. And praying to deity, if you have a deity, you know, if you speak to a deity, if you connect to spirit at all, ancestors as well. Just connecting in, lighting a candle and being with them, you know. Stillness and solitude as well, it can really be supportive for allowing yourself to sit with grief or pain or feeling a particularly uncomfortable emotion. And actually recently, Witch of Bees and Bones talked about this as well, liminal spaces and the liminality of being in a space and feeling something that is particularly uncomfortable and just being okay with that and allowing that to be okay for you in the moment and just knowing that you're safe. And for me, that's been something I've been working on for years, and I really resonated with that video that Victoria did. I will link that below. I've basically come to the end of my list of suggestions. I'm sure there's lots of others, and so if you have any, please list them below. And I'm sure I have many other insecurities and worries and fears as well, and there will be more time for speaking about those in other videos. And I just hope that this has been supportive in some way. It may have been rambling, it may have been chaotic, but I hope it's served. So thank you so much for joining me. If you liked the video, please do click the thumbs up button, share it with anyone you think will also enjoy it or it will serve. Subscribe if you haven't already and click the notification bell to receive notifications when I create and upload videos like this and other topics as well. Also, please leave me a little heart emoji below if this did resonate and if it was supportive for you. I would really, really love to see the little emoji, and I know who's made it to the end of the video as well, which is really nice to see. Also, if you'd like to support me on Patreon, I have 2 tiers. One of them is a support level. It has a Discord server and occasional Book of Shadows pages and such, and it has all of the previous moon forecasts, the full and new moon forecasts. And now I have a second tier where I am uploading those exclusively. They go into quite a lot of depth. There's a lot of shadow work, there's a tarot spread for each with a PDF, all of the aspects, how to work with them, all the energies and themes, shadow work prompts, lots and lots of them. As I said, goes quite into a lot of detail. There's the folklore there as well, how you can work with some of the more benefic aspects as well as the potentially challenging aspects as well, and witchcraft, spells, practices that you can engage with, and ritual suggestions, as well as herbs and crystals included in that PDF every single month, 2 of them a month, so for the new moon and the full moon. So do find that on Patreon. I really enjoy putting my heart and soul into those. I put a lot of energy into them, and it means a lot when people support me. So do go over and check that out if you are interested to work with the moon really closely and to learn more about each lunation as we move through the zodiac. I have Instagram as well, so do find me there. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you stay well and safe. Look after yourselves, and I will look forward to seeing you again in another video soon. Many blessings. Mwah. Bye.